In 1879, Victorian London was gripped by a crime so grotesque, so methodical, that it simply became known as the Barnes Mystery. At the center of it was a 54-year-old widow named Julia Martha Thomas. She lived alone at 2 Mayfield cottages in Richmond, a quiet, respectable suburb along the River Thames. She was twice widowed, financially comfortable, devout, and known among neighbors as demanding in particular. She needed help around the house, so she hired a servant. That servant was 30-year-old Irish woman Kate Webster, and within weeks, one of them would be dead. Webster had a troubled past. She had previous theft convictions in Ireland and had already served time in prison. She was described as clever, manipulative, and quick tempered. She also had a young son she rarely saw. From the beginning, the two women clashed. Julia was strict and controlling, Webster resented authority. Arguments were frequent. Neighbors later testified they heard raised voices coming from the house. On Sunday, March 2nd, 1879, the tension reached its breaking point. Julia returned home from church. That afternoon, the women argued. According to Webster's later confession, she pushed Julia down the staircase in a fit of rage. But the fall didn't kill her, so Webster strangled her. What happened next shocked even hardened Victorian investigators. Rather than flee, Webster decided to dispose of the body herself. In the kitchen of the small cottage, she dismembered Julia's corpse. She boiled body parts in a small copper to remove flesh from bone. She buried some remains in the fireplace. She packed other pieces into boxes and parcels and dumped them into the River Thames. The smell must have been overwhelming. Neighbors later recalled unusual smoke from the chimney, thick and greasy. Weeks later, human remains were recovered from the river near Barnes, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. But not all of Julia had been accounted for. Even more chilling than the dismemberment was what Webster did next. She didn't leave, she moved into Julia's bedroom, she wore her clothes, she began selling off Julia's furniture to unsuspecting buyers. And in one of the most bizarre twists of a case, she impersonated her dead employer. Webster introduced herself to neighbors as Miss Thomas. She signed documents in her name. She even entertained guests in the home. For days, no one realized Julia was dead, but suspicions grew. Her personality seemed different. And eventually, after the river remains were discovered, police began investigating. Bloodstains and greasy residue were found inside the cottage. Webster fled to Ireland before she could be arrested, but she didn't stay free for long. She was tracked down, arrested, and brought back to London to stand trial at the Old Bailey. During the trial, Webster claimed self-defense. She said Julia had been abusive and that the killing was accidental. The jury didn't believe her. The calculated dismemberment, the impersonation, the selling of possessions, it all suggested planning and cold intent. She was found guilty. On July 29th, 1879, Kate Webster was executed by hanging at Wadsworth Prison. She was 30 years old. Interestingly, it was later discovered that she had lied about her age throughout the trial, claiming to be younger in an attempt to gain sympathy. The crime captivated Victorian Britain. Female murderers were rare, and the press sensationalized every grisly detail. Newspapers described the boiling of the flesh in horrific language. The public couldn't look away. And yet, one part of Julia was never found, her skull. For more than a century, it remained missing, until 2010. Construction workers excavating a garden in Richmond unearthed a human skull buried beneath the soil. The property was owned at the time by renowned naturalist and broadcaster David Attenborough. There is no connection between him and the crime. He had simply purchased the property decades later. But forensic analysis confirmed the skull was consistent with Julia Martha Thomas. After 131 years, a missing piece of her body had finally been recovered, just yards from where she was killed. The Barnes mystery remains one of the most disturbing domestic murders of Victorian era, not simply because of the violence, but because of the aftermath, the impersonation, the calculated normalcy. The way Webster stepped into Julia's life as if trying it on. For days, she wore her victim's identity like a costume, and no one immediately noticed the difference. In the end, Julia Martha Thomas wasn't just murdered, she was dismantled, disposed of, replaced, and for more than a century, part of her lay buried in the very garden of the house where she died, waiting to be found. For this episode, I made an apple crisp. It was delicious. I just wish that I had had some vanilla ice cream to go with it. Again, I'm Jody Breton, and this is Meals to Unalive For. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.